Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On Point EDC. Today we have a cool review for you from the brand Tactile Knife Company. Now, they were founded by Will Hodges of Tactile Turn Machined Pens. They are also US based, and they pretty much are all about hand machined and assembled products coming out of Texas. Now, a little bit about this type of knife. I'd consider this an EDC folding utility knife. Some key common characteristics and design language when you're looking for something that can be carried around every day as part of your everyday carry. Of course, you're going to be looking for that pocketable size and versatile blade shape. Now, this is the Rockwall Thumbstud, and it's an American-made pocket knife that's really commensurate with the quality we've come to expect from Tactile Turn machined pens. The price on this is $299, so $299, about $300 from Tactile Knife Company, which is pretty good considering the fact that this is made in the good old US of A, as well as the fact that it uses all of these premium materials to include CPM 20CV for the blade steel, as well as, of course, this beautifully textured and contoured titanium for the scales or handles, whatever you want to refer them to as well as the hardware itself. So I did review the original Rockwall, and I've had the Thumbstud version of it also for a while. The original was a traditional flipper. This is the Thumbstud model. I absolutely love it. I just haven't had a chance to review it until now, and I'm happy to share it with you guys because I think it's a really cool piece. I know for some of you, you're thinking, wow, $300 is a lot for a knife, but when it comes to a knife made in America, that's actually quite competitive, especially when you consider pretty much the rest of the attributes of this knife, to include, of course, objectively the materials and whatnot, the fit and finish, and then also a lot of really great subjective items in terms of its design, in terms of the way that it feels in hand, and the level of action when you're actuating that blade out. There is a nice level of fidget factor there. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this knife in hand, and take a closer look. All right, now before I pick this blade up, really quick customary wristwatch check. I do have a Zelos Mako in titanium, and the reason why I wore it is because it's a bit of a kind of gentleman's take on a really well-spec'd tough diver, and this is a bit of a gentleman's knife kind of take on, of course, something that is really, when you consider the build quality, the materials and design ethos and everything like that, it's really meant to be ultimately capable, but it's a really nice form factor here, very pocketable, very svelte, and in terms of size, very comparable to something like a small Sebenza. So really, really beautiful. I mean, I've reviewed quite a few knives on the channel. I have a pretty large collection, and the action on this one is just, whew. Oh yeah, it's just, it's up there. It's really, 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 really nice to fidget with and actuate and just kind of use. Let me make sure I get it into focus here, because I want you guys to be able to see a lot of these fine details. Now, of course, the blade steel, there are a couple of different options here. This is the 20 CV model, which is what my preference was, because I'm a big fan of 20 CV and M390. And then it does have an inset lock, as you can see, which means that it's going to be, pretty much the same on both sides, which is nice in terms of kind of design aesthetic. You don't really have kind of a lock side versus a show side. Pretty much both sides represent as a show side. And I would even say that even though you do have this deep carry pocket clip here, it still renders as pretty much a show side, because it still looks really great from, an aesthetic standpoint. But you are getting a nice level of symmetry when you look at this knife, which of course, doesn't really matter for cutting tasks, but in terms of, hey, when you're going to pay extra and you start thinking about all those little intangibles, that's something that I think really goes a long way. So you're getting a flat grind there, stonewash finish on the blade. It's pretty sharp out of the box. It has a very nice sharpening choil for when you do need to resharpen it. Depending on your blade steel you choose, you may or may not be resharpening it as often. Let me just give it a quick little wipe there, so you guys can take a nice look at the blade itself. Let me let it focus. Okay, it's wanting to get kind of far out. There you go. Let's bring it in. There we go. Very nice. So let's hold the focus right there. Look at that. I mean, that is a looker, guys. Just, I'll let the detail be there while I speak a little bit more about some of the specs. So this is overall length on this is 7 inches, which is about perfect. And then the blade length is just under 3 inches at 2.84. And then the closed length on this very handsome handle here is going to be 4 inches. The weight is only 2.5 ounces, and in hand, although it is quite stick-like, it's not overly thin feeling, so it does fill the hand relatively well. I got about a medium-sized glove there. It does have ceramic ball bearings in the pivot. The action is quite smooth and snappy. It has a nice detent, which is a ceramic ball bearing detent, and it's very snappy in terms of that thumb stud geometry for actuation. I mean, that thing just wants to fly, even if, I mean, I could kind of try to misfire it, and yeah, I can do it, like if I just give it a little bit of that. But as long as I'm trying to actually open the knife, it's very, very reliable. And you can see it kind of bit on my nail there, just because it also closes quite well, although not completely drop shut, because it's a small light blade at the end of the day. So it's hard to make something in this size range that's going to be just completely fall shut without having some weight to that blade. And I think having that lightweight blade is something that's really nice. Now, in terms of the in-pocket experience, it lays nice and flat. It's quite unobtrusive, very compact. I will say the lack of kind of ramp there. Let's get in close. You see how there's a very short ramp. It does make you do have to be a little bit more deliberate when you do put this in pocket. So if that ramp was a little bit more extended, like let's say if it came out to here, like and met my nail, then you would just have a little bit more ramp to be able to kind of get material underneath a bit easier. But of course, in terms of the aesthetic and in hand, so you're avoiding hot spots, I can understand why you would want to have that not come out too far. So again, it's less of an oversight and more of kind of a calculated risk from that perspective. Now, in terms of model variants, there's of course traditional flipper that's available that you guys seen on the channel already, as well as several blade steel options. So there's definitely some different things available depending on, you know, where you're purchasing from, whether it be directly or maybe from a retailer that's going to be stocking a couple of these, depending on, you know, the size of the most recent run of production. And then in terms of comparable options, you know, there aren't a ton of, you know, I'd say comparative knives that are US made within this category, especially at this level of in-house production. But I mean, of course, you could always compare this to something like a Chris Reeves knife, small Sabenza, as a benchmark, but you know, very different in design and execution though. So although I think both very high quality, you know, you won't really mistake in this knife for a Sabenza, although, you know, it does have a similar blade profile and, you know, being the thumb stud deployment, stuff like that, the very basics. You know, somebody who doesn't know about knives might mistake them, but a connoisseur will definitely know that this is something very different. And if you're somebody that really digs tactile turn pens, then things like this great finish here is going to be something that's really going to resonate and stand out with you, and you're going to recognize it. Even the hardware you really recognize as within kind of that brand's design language. So bottom line, in kind of typical Tactile fashion, they do find a way to make a $300 knife feel like a deal, in the same way that they make a $100 pen feel like a good deal. So with all that said, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do hit like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.